Hello and welcome to Not Made in China, the podcast where we talk all things adoption and the beautiful madness that comes with that. I'm Shaosheen, your host, and today I'm going to be talking to the wonderful Jodie about her experience with adoption within the UK when she was adopting her son Charlie. So Jodie, first of all, welcome to Not Made in China and just thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So to get right into it, I'd love to know a bit more about your adoption story, where you adopted your Charlie from, and a bit about why you wanted to adopt in the first place.
Yeah, so I've been married to my husband for, 16 years now. We started trying for children, biological children, as soon as we got married. It quite After many years, it came to the realization that it was never going to happen biologically. And we sort of came to the realization that it didn't matter if our children were biologically related to us, we just wanted to be parents. And that's obviously when we started pursuing the adoption process, which was years ago now. So 2018, we registered our interest to start the process.
And again, do you think, had you known that adoption was such a viable option earlier on, would that been something you'd want to explore? Because I remember you said to me it was quite a long time before you did start to look into adoption.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it wasn't really something we thought of because it wasn't something that a lot of people talk about. There's not, I mean, there is a lot more now in social media and things, but there wasn't. I mean, especially like 16 years ago when we first started trying to have children. Um, but yeah, I think it's something that should be spoken about in schools, that should be spoken about on TV and things a lot more, because it isn't something just for infertile couples. It's something that anybody can do to grow their family. But a lot of people see it as kind of a last resort if you can't have biological children, which I guess in a way we kind of did. But now we know that it could have just been our first option. We didn't have to try for all the years that we tried. We could have just gone straight down that route. But had we done that, we wouldn't have Charlie now. So I guess it all kind of happened for a reason, really.
Of course, yeah, everything happened for a reason, absolutely. But I also completely agree. It definitely should be an option presented to all couples, just as something that's just as valid as conceiving a child naturally. And I think then in that way, it would eliminate maybe like embarrassment or feelings of shame if people can't conceive, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. It should be if you can't conceive naturally, then there are all these other options that are just as valid and just as equal, and just as rewarding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And in terms of the adoption process itself, so again, I know it's such a complex process, but for you, were there any particular challenges along the way?
I suppose the main two really um, was how deeply you have to go into your past and discuss kind of your feelings about things that have happened, um, people that you've lost in your family, if you've had any significant deaths in your family, about your mental health, your physical health. You have to have like a medical and stuff done. So it can be quite intrusive. So that's kind of one of the things. And the other thing is the waiting. There is a lot of waiting when it comes to going through the process, because there's like three stages of the process really. So there's stage one where you have loads of interviews, you go through all the intrusive stuff. Then you have to do training courses. For us, there were no training courses available when we finished stage one, so we had to wait 3 months for there to be spaces available. So stage one took a lot longer than it should have done for us. Then when you go into stage two, you're preparing for approval panel. So which is where basically you go into a room of people and they basically say yay or nay as to whether you're allowed to adopt or not. So yeah, stage two is a lot more of the intrusive stuff. You're also building up with your social worker a profile, which is what the people in the panel read, to say whether you're going to be good enough to adopt or not, which is it's awful in a way because people that can have biological children can literally just pop one out and
Yeah.
no one questions it unless there's unless there's any like neglect issues or abuse issues or whatever like that. People can just have babies whenever they like, but if you want to adopt, you're so critiqued about everything. But that profile that you're building is also what family finders will look at, you know, when they're trying to find parents for the children. So yeah, so again, that's another load of waiting. And then once you've been approved, you could be waiting years to find a
Gosh.
child as well. We were very lucky. We did actually have two matches, well, two links to children before we found Charlie, but unfortunately they fell through. But yeah, I think it was about 6 months between approval panel and when we found, well, we first saw a photo of Charlie. So yeah, for us, our sort of whole journey was only about 2 years long, which it doesn't seem like long, but when you're waiting to be parents, it is quite a long time. I know for others, it can be, you know, how long is a piece of string that they're waiting. So, you know, we didn't wait that long in comparison to what some others, but it was long enough.
Yeah, definitely. And I can imagine when you're not quite sure where that finish line is, it just feels like forever. So had you, I
Yeah.
suppose, had you known, okay, it's going to be exactly 2 years, then at least you can start counting down. But when you don't know, it must just feel a bit like eternity.
Yeah, because the thing is as well, even once you've got your child at home, they're not legally yours yet. So you've also got that weight because they're not technically yours yet. They still belong to the local authority. So, you know, if they need to go and see the doctor or anything like that, you have to report back to the local authority. And there's certain things you can't do with them. Like we wouldn't have been able to go on like an abroad holiday with Charlie if we wanted to until we had the adoption order.
Oh, really?
Again, we were very lucky in
Mm.
that his birth family didn't contest the adoption order, um, basically because they knew it was the right thing for him. Had they done that, then we'd have been waiting a lot longer. But we were only waiting again about 6 months between him coming home and having the adoption order, which again is quite quick for some
Mm.
adoptive families. They're waiting. I mean, I've been speaking to a lady recently, and they're almost at 3 years, and they've just had it done, had the adoption order put through.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, for some families it can take a lot longer. So we were very lucky.
Oh, I'm so pleased it worked out so well for you and you didn't have to wait. And well, I say so long, it's still long enough, but
Yeah,
I'm glad it wasn't dragged out longer than it needed to be.
yeah.
Um, and I'd love to talk a bit more about the actual matching process. How did that work? Did you work with an external company? How did you find yeah, how did you find Charlie? I suppose is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so we were on a website called Link Maker.
Mhm.
So again, it's like your profile that you've made up during the process, and it's kind of like a dating website. If I'm honest, you've got your profile and you've got your
Mhm.
photos on there, and basically you have your criteria of sounds really bad, but things that you couldn't handle in a child. So, for instance, we lived in an upstairs flat. So, for us, a child with a physical disability wouldn't have been suitable because we had no lift, and it was like concrete stairs up to our flat. So, it just wouldn't have been suitable at the time. So, yeah, you basically have to put down all the things that you can and can't handle, and then you basically just look through photos. Um, well, in fact, we tried not to look at the photos first. We tried to read all the profile first and
Mm.
make sure there wasn't anything that we wouldn't be able to cope with. Just because if we wouldn't be able to cope with it, we wouldn't be the best parents for that
Of
child.
course.
So, yeah, we tried to read them first, but then our social worker sent us a link to Charlie's profile, and because we didn't know at the time, but his social worker had actually bookmarked us as a match for him. So obviously our social worker was just sort of sneaking it in to see whether we thought it was a good match before they proceeded with anything. And the looking at the profile before the pictures completely went out of the window. I literally, he was in the photo, he was 5 months old and he had the biggest grin on his face. And I looked at my husband and I said, "That's our little boy."
Oh.
And he looked at me and said, "Yeah, I think it is."
Mm.
And we didn't even read, well, obviously we did read the profile, but our mind was made up before we'd even read it. It didn't matter to us what was written there. That was it. He was our little boy. And luckily, everything went well, and he is our little boy, and he's just turned 5.
Oh, well, happy birthday to him whenever his birthday
Yeah,
was.
yeah, it was last
And
week.
oh, that's really sweet. Well, I hope you had a
Yeah,
wonderful, wonderful day.
yeah.
And it's so wonderful. It's lovely when, yeah, you must have just seen that photo and known in your gut, that's our son.
Yeah, I mean, we had seen other children on Linkmaker, and as I mentioned, we have had been linked with two others, which were actually little girls, for sort of a few months before we saw his photo. But one of them, we just didn't feel right after we'd spoken to the social worker, and the other one, basically they'd lived in a massive house with a, like, basically in a farm, and coming to move in with us in a flat just wouldn't have been good for that child, which we didn't actually feel disappointed, so we knew that the match wouldn't have been right. But yeah, when we saw Charlie, we just knew.
And once you've kind of made that link, so what's the next step? I guess you've kind of answered that in a way. I suppose you learn a bit more about the child and where they're at. And then after that, is it
Yeah.
then determined whether it's the right match or not?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, this all happened during COVID, so there were some like restrictions to things. Everything was being done over Zoom. So we initially saw his photos in the March of 2020, and then it wasn't until the June, I think, that we were officially linked with him. Like the social workers had said, right, we're not looking anymore for any other parents, or anything like that. So then we had to wait a little bit longer until we got a date for our matching panel. So we didn't get the date until September. So it was quite a wait. Basically, because of COVID, obviously all the court dates and things were all held back because they hadn't been able to go in. Um, but we were very lucky in that we were put in touch with his foster carers in the August. So we had been getting photos and updates and things from them from August, which I know some adoptive parents don't have that luxury because some local authorities don't allow that. But we were very lucky that ours did. And so did Charlie's, because we did actually adopt out of county. So he was from a separate local authority. Um, so yeah, it was from the September, and then we had to isolate for 2 weeks before we could go and meet him. So that was even more waiting. So yeah, and then end of September we went down to where the foster carers live, and met him for the first time. So yeah, it was amazing.
That's incredible. And what was it like to meet him for the first time? And what was that? I say handover like it's you going on annual leave and handing something over, but what was that? What was that process like for you?
Um, it was so good because I mean, he was 9 months at the time, and when we got to their house, he was having a sleep. So it was quite nice because we were able to sit and speak to the foster carers for a little bit before he woke up, and just sort of find out like what his daily routine is and things like that. And just get to know them really, because we were very conscious from the beginning that we wanted to try and keep the foster carers in his life. So we needed to make sure that we had a really good relationship with them too, which luckily they are the most amazing people you would ever meet. And we are so happy to call them our friends, because if they hadn't been nice people, it would have been really tricky to keep them in our lives as well. But it's a real shame that they live so far away from us because we don't get to see them as much as we'd like. But yeah, so once he'd woken up, he actually just came and crawled straight over to us. So I did manage to get a photo of me cuddling him the first day that we met, which I didn't expect him to want to come and play with us or anything. He had seen photos of us beforehand, and we did send him a book that had like our photo and our voices recorded, telling him things about like the house. We'd sent photos of like our living room and things, and we said things like, "This is where you'll play," and so he had heard our voices and seen our pictures. But yeah, we weren't expecting sort of to be able to have a cuddle and stuff on the first day we met him. So because he was so little, our introductions were planned for just over 2 weeks.
Hmm.
So we spent 9 days down where they lived, and we like took him out for day trips and things. Well, what we could do with the restrictions for COVID and stuff. So, but we were able to take him to like a garden centre, and we went to an aquarium. And just did little things with him. We did like bedtime routine, gave him a bath, and then yeah, the beginning of October, he then came to stay with us. But that's where we had to change the introduction schedule a little bit. Basically, the first 2 nights he was supposed to go back to the hotel with the foster carers, but he just became so distressed going back to the hotel. So we had to sort of pull moving day in a bit early. Well, they usually call it placement day, but we called it moving in day because placement day still happened about 5 days later, which is when the foster carers had to do their goodbye. So during those 5 days, they were still coming and visiting in the morning, and then they were going off to do whatever, and we just looked after him at home. And then, yeah, the 5th of October, 2020, he moved in, and that was it. He was at home forever.
Wonderful. And it's amazing how quickly he bonded with you. And it clearly was a match made in heaven.
It was. It really was. We were so shocked, and we sort of just took to it really easily as well. You know, we were worried about it, about how we would all sort of get on and whether we'd actually be any good at this parenting stuff. But actually, it just became second nature, really. I mean, I've worked with children for years. I'm a qualified nursery nurse, so I knew what I was doing with regards to like feeding, changing a nappy, and all that stuff. But the being a mum part, I was worried wouldn't come naturally because I was so used to being nursery nurse. But it just came when they're in your home. It just happens.
Yeah. And it's your child. And yeah,
Yeah,
regardless of genetics, you know that's your son. So,
yeah,
of course, yeah.
exactly.
And it's wonderful that it did come so naturally. And it's also fantastic, as you said, that the foster parents were so cooperative and clearly such wonderful people. And that,
Yeah.
yeah, that must have made that whole transition process so much easier.
Oh, it did. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suffer really badly with anxiety, and I was actually quite poorly while we did introductions. I didn't eat for the whole 2 weeks because I just couldn't face any food because
Oh,
my
bless
stomach
you.
was in such knots. I think because we'd waited so long for it
Yeah.
to happen, and then it was actually happening, and it's like my body just went, "Whoa, hold on, we're not ready for this."
Hmm.
Because this is the thing with adoption, like when you have a biological child, you've got the 9 months pregnancy to kind of get used to the idea. You see the bump growing and you feel the baby moving and all that sort of stuff. But with adoption, we literally got told on one day, yep, you can be parents of this little boy. And within 2 weeks, like within less than a month, he was in our house.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it's such a short turnaround.
Yeah, and had we not had to isolate because of COVID, it would have been an even shorter period of time.
And I guess it must be mad going from this whole eternal waiting period to suddenly within 2 weeks they're there in your house.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's very
it's
sort of stop
crazy.
start and you know, all a bit mad.
Yeah, and I think as well because you're waiting for so long, you sort of part of you doesn't believe it's ever going to happen.
Hmm.
Even though you know you're approved as adopters and you're linked with this baby, it just seems to take forever. And then when you're finally there, you're like, "Whoa, I've actually got a human I've got to take care of."
Yeah, I've got to do this now.
Yeah,
And going back to something you were talking about earlier, so in terms of the approval panel, I'd love to know a bit more about that. I mean, what kinds of people are on that panel and what kind of questions would they ask, if you don't mind me asking, of course.
no, that's absolutely fine. So I think on ours we had at least two or three adoptive parents. There were some social workers. I think there was a family finder. Um, and I think there was an adoptee as well, like obviously
Okay.
an adult
Mm.
adoptee. So they do get given your profile before they go in, and our social worker was amazing, and our profile was very very detailed.
Mm.
Had it not been so detailed, we probably would have had a few more questions. But I think we only had two or three questions, and the main one was, "Why do you want to adopt?"
Hmm.
And basically, I think what they want to hear is that you want to extend your family and provide a loving home for a child. Because I'm sure some people probably, well, I've had it said to me in the past of you're saving a child.
Mm.
And that's not what adoption is about. It's not about saving a child. It's about giving them a loving home.
Absolutely.
So obviously, you have to really think about how you're going to answer these questions because they kind of are the make or break. If you answer how they don't want to hear it, they could easily say no, and then that's the end of it.
Gosh, so much pressure.
It really is. But as I say, our social worker was very detailed. So, you know, some people that I've spoken to had like 10, 12 questions asked and it's mainly because their social worker just hadn't put enough detail into the profile.
Mm.
So yeah, we were very lucky in that regard, because you're so nervous on the day, you're worried that you're going to get verbal diarrhea and just keep
Yeah.
spilling out stuff that might not be
Yeah.
the right information, but you just want to make sure you get the question right.
And in terms of the detail on your profile, so what kind of detail did your social worker include that other people might have not? Or is it just more, it just was more detailed generally?
Yeah, it just was more detailed, and I think it also depends on how honest you are and how detailed you are when you have all of your meetings throughout the process. Um, my husband and I have both suffered with mental health and anxiety, and we're both very open and honest about it. So there was a lot about that, about how we deal with it, who we can go to for help if we need help with it. Because obviously this process can be quite traumatic for some people, and the children all come with some type of trauma. And if you're not ready to be able to deal with that and know how to reach out for help, you're kind of going to become unstuck, and mental health can go downhill again. So, yeah, there was a lot about your family history, medical history, your support system, like for physical support, mental support for you and for the child when the child eventually becomes part of your family. They also asked like what your family have done to help you through the process. Like, have they done any reading to become sort of more educated on adoption? Because as we all know, not a lot of people are educated on it. They don't
Yeah.
understand that, that children that are adopted will come with trauma because they have been removed from their birth family, and there is always going to be that connection there. Because I think some people still think it's very much like long lost families.
Yeah.
Children,
Yeah.
like, oh, the children get relinquished because it's an unmarried 16-year-old mother, and you change their name and raise them as you want to raise them. But that's not the case anymore.
No.
A lot of these children are taken into care because their birth families are just incapable of looking after them. They've got mental health issues themselves, abuse, drug use, things like that. It's not as simple as being relinquished anymore, because there is support there for young mums now. So it's just not the same as you see on the TV anymore.
No, definitely not. And in terms of Charlie's birth parents, if you don't mind me asking, do you talk much about them to him? Does he know much about them? And do you actually know much about them?
So we know quite a lot about birth mum. Birth father, we don't, because he refused a DNA test. So obviously, birth mum knows who it is, but he's refused. So we're not allowed any information about him
Hmm.
at all. Um, Charlie may be able to find out information as he gets older if he does one of these DNA websites or
Yeah,
whatever. But for the time being, we haven't actually mentioned anything about a birth father, because
of
how do you
course.
explain to a 5-year-old? But birth mum, he knows that he's got a birth mum. He knows that he grew in her tummy and that she just wasn't able to look after him. For him, it's a little bit easier because he did go into foster care from hospital. So obviously he knew that he lived with his foster carers. So, but he's known from the word go. So when adopted children come home, they should come home with a life story book. Sometimes these take years to get to you, and sometimes they're not very good, but they do come with a life story book. Charlie's isn't great, so I am remaking it so that it makes sense and things. But yeah, so he was given a large copy that has basically got a lot more detail into it, and he was given a small copy that was laminated for him to have from birth, basically.
Hmm.
So it's got a photo of him with birth mum in the hospital. It's got photos of his foster carers, of us when he came home. It just gives him a bit of brief information about that she wasn't able to care for him, so he went to live with his foster carers. Um, but we've spoken about it honestly and openly since he came home, so he's known from the word go. So I did actually ask him. I've written it down so that I could get the exact
Oh,
quote. So I did say to him earlier, "How does he feel about being adopted?" And he said, I quote, "Good. I feel really good you choosed me, and I love you so much." So yeah, so he knows that we chose him, and that that's how we made our family. We do have some amazing storybooks about adoption. And he actually took one of them into school when they were doing their families topic, because he wanted to tell all his friends about how we became a family.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah, his teacher said they all really enjoyed it as well, so it's really nice. And I just, because we want him to be open and honest and proud about how we became a family. I don't want the awkward question of, well, why didn't you grow in your mummy's tummy,
Mm.
or things like that, which kids do ask because
Oh, they
they're
do.
they're inquisitive, they just want to know.
Hmm.
So yeah, he's known from the beginning, and he's very happy about it.
Oh, good. And it's lovely that, yeah, on one that he's not only just happy about it, but he's so proud of it. And
Yeah,
yeah, and he can share that with his peers and his teachers. And I'm sure he's taught them a lot that they might not have known before.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And before he started school, or has he started school? I get confused with
He started school
kids'
in
ages.
September. Yeah.
So when he started school, did you kind of have to prep him for any questions that kids might ask him, or even things that teachers might ask him about being adopted?
No, I mean he'll just answer it with what he knows. And we've said there's no secret about it. There's nothing to hide. So, and there's nothing. I obviously haven't said to him there's nothing to be ashamed of, because he just thinks it's great anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't think he would feel embarrassed about it. I mean, as he gets older and sort of gets to secondary school and things like that, we may have some issues, because kids can be cruel.
Mhm.
When especially when it's things that then they don't know about,
Yeah.
or don't understand. But then that's why we're teaching him, you know, how we became a family, and that it's a positive thing, because it is a positive thing.
Definitely. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing. And yeah, as he was growing up, so you mentioned you had a few storybooks that you used to read to him that were related to adoption. Can I ask
Yeah.
which ones they were, just out of interest, just in case anyone's listening and going, "Oh, actually, I'd quite like to get some of those."
Yes. So there's his two favourites are the Family Fairies and the Family Puzzle, and they're both written by the same lady. I want to say it's Rosemary Lucas, but I might be wrong. But I will find out and let you know, because
Brilliant.
it's quite important to know, because they are absolutely brilliant books. And actually, in the book, the little boy that's in the book that gets adopted looks like him.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so he actually thinks that that book is written about us, because the mum in it has got glasses as well. So
Oh,
he thinks
stop.
it's actually about us. So yeah, it is. It's The Family Fairies by Rosemary Lucas. But yeah, so basically the Family Fairies are the social workers, and and they find the baby for the family that are looking for a baby. But yeah, he absolutely loves it. I mean, there are a few out there. He loves Eddie Finds a Family as well. So that's about a little emu that's looking for a home. And he gets adopted by some flamingos.
Oh, so
So
sweet.
yeah, they're so sweet, but they're written by adopters. So they're written by people that know what they're talking about, that have been through it, that have got children that can relate to it as well. And I think they wrote them because there just weren't any books that related to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're absolutely brilliant, and we love them. We read them so many times.
Oh, they're so sweet. I might buy them just to read them. They sound really, yeah, they sound
Yeah, they're really
adorable.
good.
And just out of interest, I mean, do you find that there are many kind of taboos or misconceptions about adoption? Or when you were going through the process, did people have these preconceived ideas that were probably incorrect?
Yeah, I mean the main one was that we were saving a child,
Yeah.
and it's one of my bugbears, because ideally children should be with their birth family,
Mm.
if it's okay to, and they're safe. So people being adopted isn't always a great thing for them, because especially if they've been adopted when they're older and they've been removed from their families, you know that's all they know. I have been asked what was wrong with the birth family. Yeah, some people will ask quite intrusive questions, like what was wrong with him, why didn't they want to keep him,
Charming.
which there was nothing wrong with him.
No, not at all.
She
Quite the
couldn't look
opposite.
after him. Yeah, and and people will sort of whisper about it as if it's like something they
Mm.
shouldn't talk about.
Hmm.
When I'm like, yeah, we adopted, we
Yeah.
chat to me about it, ask me questions. I mean, I post quite a lot on my Instagram about it, just because I feel like it's my place as someone that's been through it to educate others, so that Charlie doesn't have to go through life being asked all these awkward
Yeah.
questions. Whether people pay attention to me, I don't know, but I will try, because as his parent, I have to advocate for him, because who else is going to if I don't?
Absolutely.
And whenever it's like National Adoption Week and stuff, I'll always try and do Q&As and things, and get people to ask questions. they're pretty much always all the same questions, like why did we adopt? Why didn't we have our own children? But he is my own child. He just
Yes.
didn't come out of me.
Yeah, people love wording things like that,
Yeah,
don't they?
and it is just about the way that people word things a lot of the time, and but it's because they haven't been educated.
Yeah.
They haven't been through the process, so they use the incorrect terminology, which is kind of not their fault really, because if you're not going through it, then you're not going to know. I mean, I guess it's the same as if someone's got a medical condition and you don't know anything about it, you might use the wrong words for it. But if you're going to ask somebody questions, just try and maybe research about it first, or
Definitely.
sort of say, I don't know how to word this, but can I
Yeah.
ask you this?
Totally agree. Yeah, instead of bulldozing in and just asking
Yeah,
without really considering or having much sensitivity about it, because it is such a, well, I don't even want to say sensitive topic, but it's such a deeply personal topic.
yeah,
Yeah, if people come in and go, again, as a child, I was often asked, oh, who are your real parents, or where are your real parents? And it never
yes,
bothered me because, again, I think my parents are similar to you. Like, I grew up knowing I was adopted and I knew they were my real parents. So they just teach me to sort of joke it off, laugh it off, and it never bothered me. But kids would always come up to me and go, oh, where are your real parents? Or, oh, my mum said that your real parents didn't want you, or something like that.
yeah,
And it's just, yeah, and it's just a lack of understanding. And also, kids are kids. There's that too.
yeah, yeah. But then it comes from the fact that their parents aren't educated in it, so they
Yeah.
haven't taught them. But yeah, the real parents thing. I remember the first time I took him to the doctors about something. I think it might have been his 12-month injections. I was asked if I was his real mum, and I sort of sat
Pardon.
there and I was thinking, I'm bringing him for his injections because he hadn't he hadn't been with us long by that point. These were the first injections I'd ever taken him for. I was absolutely pooing my pants because I had never taken a baby for injections before.
Oh, bless
I was
you.
like, he's going to scream. Like, I was crying. And in hindsight, when I came out, I was like, why didn't I just say, well, I'm not pretend. I'm not pretending at this.
Yeah.
But also, she said it to me in front of Charlie.
Really?
I mean, he was 12 months old, so obviously he didn't understand at that point. And like, if they said that to me now, he'd be like looking at me like, oh my God, are you not my real parent? Because to us, we're the only parents he knows.
Of course. I mean, you are his only parents. I always say, I think we can all have these titles like mum, dad, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, but unless there's a person to actually step up and step into that role, it doesn't mean anything. And you are absolutely his parents. There's no
Yeah,
doubt about it. So for someone to, I'm sure she wasn't, well, yeah, for someone to question that is just not okay, especially in front of your child, no matter how old they are.
yeah. I mean, I think I just said, yeah, I'm just not his birth mum,
Mm.
or something along those lines. But I was getting so flustered because I was trying to
Oh,
hold Charlie
bless
down,
you.
ready for his jabs, and you know. But you just think a medical professional should know better than to say ask a question like that.
Yeah, definitely. It's really surprising because if it was someone off the street, it's equally annoying. But you might think, okay, maybe a bit ignorant. But yeah, someone in a medical field, you would think that they were used to dealing with people from different walks of life and who've had different
Yeah.
experiences.
I mean, granted, he did have a different surname at this point because we hadn't got the adoption order, but still, he could have had his dad's surname.
Then there's ways of wording it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
But yeah, people shouldn't assume.
Yeah, but then that's why I see it as my job to try and educate people.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and it's so good. It's so good that you do. And do you celebrate Charlie's adoption day?
We haven't really done anything as such. I normally make sure I take a photo so that we've got like photographic evidence of each day to like see how he's growing up and how he's changed over the years. Um, But yeah, I mean, we haven't the last few years, except for this year, actually been on holiday on that day. Obviously now he's at school, we can't go during term time, so it's a bit of a pain. But yeah, we haven't really done like a proper celebration or anything. We always tell him like, oh, this is the day you came home, this is the day that you got our name and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I know some people do. They'll go out for like family meals or whatever, but it's not something we've done really. Um, but we do always make a big fuss of like his birthday, especially with his birthday being in December because it's so close to
Oh,
Christmas. So we
oh
have to
no.
make a fuss of the birthday so that it's separate to Christmas.
Of course, of course. I know, again, of course, like celebrating adoption days, it's such a personal preference. And yeah, some people do go quite big, but then other times it's much more, yeah, there's not necessarily a need to go so big. So it's whatever, yeah, whatever works best for you. I think when I was younger, my parents were quite keen to always do something just small with us. But then as I got older, I think I found that I didn't need it, because as much as
Yeah,
it's a really significant day and it's the day we all became a family, we are a family now, and I don't need to be reminded, because I know that we're pretty solid, and I don't need to necessarily celebrate it, because every day, it sounds cheesy and cringy, but every day is a celebration of it, and just the fact we are here together, that's more than enough, and I don't necessarily need to get out cakes and balloons to to remind me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it. I guess sometimes for some adopted children, I don't know how you feel about it, but like the birthday can be a bit of a bittersweet time, and I know some adopted children really struggle with their birthday because obviously that's the day that they were born into their birth family. Um, so I guess sometimes celebrating the adoption day is like another like it's kind of oh you've lost your birth family or you're not with your birth
Mm,
family sort of thing. So I think you have to sometimes as families have to be a little bit careful. Obviously, it depends on the level of trauma the children
yeah,
are showing and how the children feel about it. But yeah, I guess it's just something we never really overly celebrated. As I say,
yeah.
we always talk about it and we always let him know that that's the day. And I always have it written on my calendar every year. Like I write on, it's been so many years since this and stuff, just so that I remember. But yeah, we don't sort of party or anything.
No, fair enough. And also, there's only so many times it might get a bit repetitive after a while.
Yeah,
So here we go again. We're still here. But it is interesting what you say about birthdays, because yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it is such a bittersweet thing in some ways. Um, Again, I know every family deals with the topic of birth parents differently. For me, my parents would always light a candle for my tummy mummy, tummy daddy, is what we called them when I was younger.
yeah,
And then we'd always have a little moment for them, and then we just sit and think about them. And then I think once my parents said, "Oh, if you look up to the moon, they're looking up at the same one," so that there's that feeling of connectivity there, which is really nice.
yeah.
And yeah, and I think just having that acknowledgement of that did happen. And of course, your birth parents are still very important people in our lives, but you're also here with us now and you're still so loved. And trying to not necessarily not make it a positive, because we should never have to make everything positive, but just saying your birth parents are very much recognized. They are a part of our lives. We love them very much. And we're also now here with you. You're safe, secure, and loved here. And trying to not kind of not focus on what's happened, but acknowledge it, but then also acknowledge the beautiful family that we have now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I struggle myself with Mother's Day. Yeah, his birthday doesn't seem to be. I mean, I always think about his birth mum on his birthday because I always think like, is she thinking about him? Is she sad today because she's not with him,
Mm,
or does she just not remember and just block it out? Like, how is she feeling? But it's Mother's Day that I struggle with the most because I like they're celebrating me, but there's someone else out there that is also his mum
mm,
that isn't getting the recognition that she's his mum. It isn't being
mhm.
celebrated. So yeah, I mean, the first couple of Mother's Days, I just felt sad all day, and I couldn't put my finger on what it was.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, I realised that that's what it was. I sort of it was a little bit. I felt a bit guilty, I suppose, because in a way, it's sort of no fault of her own that Charlie was taken into foster care. It's just that she's got learning difficulties and isn't able to look after him. So I think I'd probably feel differently if there was like abuse or drug or alcohol issues or something. Like if it was kind of her fault, say it like in that way. I'd probably feel a bit different. But I think because I know she does love him and she does care for him, I guess that's sort of where the guilt comes from a little bit, I suppose.
No, I completely understand that. And I can imagine through the whole process, you develop this empathy for someone you've never met, but of course, they're such an important part of your child's life. And it must be really hard not to think about them on Mother's Day. And I completely understand why you would have those feelings of guilt, but then also think, oh no, I shouldn't be feeling that because I've done something amazing by bringing this child into our family. And it must be a lot of conflicting emotions.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, I mean it's getting better as the years go on.
And I suppose it's one of those things that just takes time, and there's no right or wrong way to feel about it. And yeah, as you said, I mean, it's great just to understand why you do feel like that, and know that that's so fine and completely understandable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite empathetic anyway in all sort of stages of life. I'm the type of person that cries at an advert on the TV, so I do feel quite strongly about everything because I know some adoptive parents can just switch it off. They're just like, no, their birth parents, they did something wrong, that's why the children are in my care, they're mine now, that's just, that's it. But I can't think like that.
No, I'm the same as you. Honestly, I feel I'm a sensitive soul. And just going back also to what you were talking about in terms of life story work, again, so for me personally, I found it really useful because a lot of it was about my birth parents and I don't know anything about them. So my parents would ask me why, like, we discussed why they might have had to abandon me or how they might have felt doing that. And I'm not sure, was that something that you've done with Charlie? Was that part of his life story book? Or is it more just sort of factual and going through what had happened up to that point?
So yeah, I mean, we've just said to him for the moment that she wasn't able to take care of him,
Yeah,
and he wasn't safe to stay with her. And he's only 5, so he accepts that, and that's what it is. Obviously, his bigger life story book goes into a bit more detail about her family background,
mm,
sort of things that happened in her childhood that maybe have led to her not being able to take care of him. But we haven't sort of broached the sort of more in-depth stuff with him
of
as yet.
course.
But because it is in his life story book and we've got the evidence there to show him, we will eventually. But we're sort of waiting on him to ask more questions. Really, we've sort of given him enough age-appropriate information for
Mm.
now, and then as and when questions come up, then we'll answer them as best we can for the time being.
That's definitely the best way to do it. And then, yeah, as you said, you've given him all the information. He knows it's such a safe space. You're so transparent and open about everything. So, yeah, letting him take the lead is absolutely the best way to do it. And I'm sure he'll appreciate that so much growing up.
Yeah, I hope so. We've done what we think is best, and that's all that any parent can do, really.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no manual for anything in life, I suppose. You just have to give it your
No.
best. And that's, I wish there was sometimes, but no, you have to do your best, and that's that. And of course, you've done an absolutely incredible job with Charlie. He sounds just such a lovely, lovely boy. And I mean, what's he into? This is me just being nosy now. What's he into? Is he quite sporty or creative? I know I asked you this last time, so apologies for repeating myself.
Yeah, that's okay. Um, no, he loves singing. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah, he really loves singing. We've got quite sort of a mixed taste of music in our house. So my husband is very into pop punk. He's been in pop punk bands and things
Love
like
that.
that. So Charlie can sing songs that probably are not age appropriate for him, but he doesn't know what he's singing, but he just
That's
sings
fine.
along in the car. Um, but yeah, he loves TV. He would watch
Mm.
TV 24/7 if he could. But he does actually have ADHD, so watching TV is kind of his downtime and how he can sort of focus and um, things like that. So yeah, he has kind of just obviously started reading and stuff at school, so he's kind of getting a bit more into books. I mean, he's always loved a story, but he's kind of more into looking at words and trying to work out what they say by himself now. Um, and writing his name is like the big thing at the moment. He'll write his
Oh.
name on everything.
Are the walls safe or are the walls covered in his
Yeah,
name as well?
the walls are safe at the moment. We've
Good.
been writing all Christmas cards and things, so his name has been written in every card by
Oh,
himself.
bless.
So yeah, he's really pleased with being able to do that now.
Oh, that's really sweet. And do you find that there are many personality traits that he has that, or sorry, what I mean to say is, do you see a lot of yourself in him? Or is there anything that he does and you're like, oh gosh, I do that? Or, oh, my husband does that?
Yes, yes. So he stands with his hands on his hips a lot. And I keep looking at him and going, why do you keep doing that? And then I'm stood there with my hands on my hip. But yeah, he's very much like my husband. They've both got the same humour, like
Oh,
toilet humour. Farts are the
of
most
course.
hilarious thing in the world. Yeah, he's very like my husband.
Mm.
But weirdly, my husband actually took him to watch a football game with his dad the other day, and we took a photo. They've got a photo of all three of them, and actually Charlie looks like his granddad, which
No
is not
way.
it's not even possible because they're not biologically related. But in this one photo, he literally looks just like him.
That's so mad. But also,
Yeah,
in a way, I kind of do think your mannerisms and your expressions, they do adapt to the people around you. So maybe in some way he has sort of taken on those physical attributes or physical
yeah, I
similarities.
think so. I think from me, he's got my temper.
Can't
but
imagine that.
But to be honest, I think I've got ADHD as well. Since we've been going down the diagnosis route with him, I think I may have it, and I don't know whether that is maybe a trait with that. That that's why we're similar like that. But yeah, I mean, he has the same taste in music as my husband. He loves the like pop punk music and metal music and things like that. Anything with a really good beat. Um, yeah, he loves a good dance. He's obsessed with Star Wars, which is another thing he's got from my
Oh,
husband. But he will like he's made his own playlist on Spotify that is like
nice.
it, but it's just different versions of the Darth Vader theme. So it's like a heavy metal one, a dubstep one, an
Stop.
orchestra one, and he just listens to this to them one after the
Brilliant.
other. But he absolutely loves it.
I love that. And it's good to have a kid who knows what he likes. And you know what
Yeah.
you like, stick with it, enjoy it. Just I think that's brilliant. And then just to kind of round off the conversation, would you have any advice or what would you say to any parents who were considering adopting?
Go to as many information evenings as you can from various local authorities in your area, your local authority, voluntary agencies, just to get an idea of how they run things, how things go, because they all do it slightly differently. Some don't use link maker, some just do it all in house. So it depends whether you're happy with looking for children just in your area or further afield. Um, when you register your interest, just ask as many questions as you can, just to get as much information out of them as you can. And yeah, just go for it. Do your volunteering, because you do have to do some volunteering with children, whether it be go to scouts or rainbows or go into a nursery. And just make sure you've discussed with your family so you've got them there as your support network. We didn't share that much at the beginning because a lot of our family hadn't known that we were trying for a baby. So we were sort of on our own to begin with, until our social worker started talking about support networks and stuff. And then we were like, oh, we actually do need to be a little bit more open about this. So yeah, just make sure your support network is there with you and that they know what you're doing, all the steps of the way. Because if anything does go wrong or if you've got any setbacks, you need people there for you.
No, it's so important to have that network.
Yeah, it's so important. Even now, we still use ours all the time.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for joining me. It was so wonderful to talk to you and hear more about your story.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and you.
Thank you so much again, and hope you have a lovely few months, and I'm sure I'll catch up with you soon.
Yes, lovely. Thank you.